Well, this Saturday, it will be 20 years since tragedy struck America, 9/11, and a Central Ohio man has a story to tell. Thanks for joining us tonight at 11, everyone. I'm Yolanda Harris.
And I'm Andrew Kinsey. Tonight, we speak to a man who was at the Pentagon the day American Airlines Flight 77 struck the building. New at 11, 10 TV's Richard Solomon shares his story about a day he'll never forget.
Hello.
Alan Wallace has heard this sound all day.
Probably half the calls have been friends.
They call to check in on him and hear his story of one of the darkest days in American history. Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
You cannot imagine how blue the sky was. It was just hauntingly blue, like it was a warning or something. Certainly we were lucky. We should have been killed.
As a firefighter, Wallace was working at the Pentagon's firehouse near the helipad. That's where he learned of what happened in New York City.
Well, the first plane was 8:46, and then just after 9 o'clock would have been United 175 hit the South Tower.
Shortly after that, he and others saw American Airlines Flight 77 headed straight for them.
When we saw the airplane, probably less than a half a second, I feel the pressure from the explosion. It was nothing but burning.
Wallace remembers 64 people on that airplane died, and another 125 died inside the Pentagon. He and others tried to save people who were in the building, a day that will be etched in his mind forever. And 20 years later, Wallace still talks about it.
And all this stuff that you see here, this trash and debris and metal and everything, it was all on fire.
But if his phone rings in the next few days, he won't answer. He's leaving to head to Arlington, Virginia, to be where he was 20 years ago, to make sure this story continues to be told. Reporting in Lithopolis, Richard Solomon, 10 TV News.
Only 60% of the 9/11 victims have been identified. In fact, today, 2 more people were identified through a DNA analysis of remains collected from the World Trade Center. These are the first 2 identifications made in nearly 2 years. The medical examiner's office is expected to hold a news conference tomorrow to discuss the identifications further.